People online are split about this.
The View is off the air, finally.
It's a feud for the ages, folks. Two big personalities, two very different worlds, and one giant cultural clash. Bill Maher, the sharp-tongued host of Real Time, has taken aim once again, this time at Whoopi Goldberg, a Hollywood legend and co-host of The View. The result, a fiery exchange that has everyone talking. But let's be honest, are we really surprised? When you take two people who thrive on controversy and throw them into the same arena, sparks are bound to fly, and boy, did they.
I said something that I feel a responsibility for not leaving unexamined because my words upset so many people.
Now, before we dive into the juicy details, let's set the stage. Whoopi Goldberg, no stranger to stirring the pot, recently found herself in hot water after making some eyebrow-raising comments about the Holocaust on The View. During an episode, she boldly claimed that the Holocaust wasn't about race, framing it instead as an issue of how people treat each other. The backlash was swift and brutal. Critics called her remarks ignorant, dangerous, and downright offensive. ABC, the network behind The View, decided to suspend her for 2 weeks, saying she needed time to reflect and learn. But Bill Maher, he wasn't having it. In his classic, unapologetic style, Maher slammed the decision, calling the suspension so insulting and a blow to free speech. Free speech, she should be there, Maher declared on his show, adding that the notion of Whoopi Goldberg needing to reflect and learn was patronizing, if not ridiculous. And in true Ma fashion, he didn't stop there. He ridiculed the idea that Whoopi's comments could somehow inspire neo-Nazis, quipping, "There are not neo-Nazis waiting for the green light from a lady on The View." It was a jab that perfectly encapsulated Maher's frustration with what he sees as performative outrage, a theme he's hammered home time and time again.
Whoopi Goldberg, who, by the way, I hope is still a friend, we can disagree with each other, should not be canceled or put off her show, as much as I totally disagree with her crazy statement. Free speech. She should be there. She shouldn't get a timeout.
Not every single thing has to be for everybody.
But let's not forget, this isn't the first time these two titans have clashed. Their history of butting heads goes back years, and if anything, it seems to fuel the fire each time they cross paths. Whether it's Goldberg calling Maher out for his COVID-related jokes or Ma taking aim at The View's often chaotic debates, their feud has become a recurring headline. And honestly, it's not just about the two of them anymore. It's about the broader cultural divide they represent.
I was excavating, reading over all these editorials from years and years and years, and I wanted to find that answer. I speak for the normies, you know. I speak for that, I think, vast middle that is tired of the partisanship. I don't want to hate half the country, and I don't hate half the country.
Take, for example, Maher's critique of what he calls woke culture. He's built a reputation for skewering what he sees as overly sensitive performative activism, and Goldberg has often found herself in his crosshairs. Recently, Maher mocked Goldberg's handling of another hot topic, COVID mandates. On his show, he lamented the paranoid world of masks, vaccine checks, and endless restrictions, likening it to being treated like a bunch of bananas at the grocery store. Goldberg, of course, didn't take it lightly. During an episode of The View, she fired back, saying, "That's not really funny to people who have lost their loved ones." She even went so far as to tell Maher to stay away from everybody if he didn't want to follow the rules. The tension was palpable, and it was clear that their ideological differences were only getting deeper.
No, I mean, this is a show watched by a lot of women. Women have no rights in this place, and a lot of majority Muslim countries around the world. I mean, there is no equal rights as far as speech, dress, opportunities for education, reproductive rights, freedom from violence, freedom from harassment.
The LGBTQ community as well.
Yes. That too.
But back to the latest drama. Maher's defense of Whoopi's right to free speech wasn't just about her Holocaust comments. It was a broader critique of cancel culture and what he sees as its chilling effect on public discourse. "You don't have to agree with her," Maher said. "I don't. But we don't learn anything by silencing people." It's a sentiment that resonates with many, especially as debates over free speech continue to dominate headlines. But for Goldberg, the fallout wasn't just about being silenced. It was personal. She issued 2 public apologies, clearly shaken by the backlash, and yet, the controversy didn't end there. Enter David Bad-DL, a comedian and writer who weighed in on the matter, calling Goldberg's comments confusing and reflective of a larger misunderstanding about anti-Semitism. He didn't hold back, pointing out that the Holocaust was explicitly about racial purity, not just religious intolerance. It was a nuanced take, but one that added even more fuel to an already blazing fire.
Whoopi has to rest her ginormous mouth in bad attitude.
And then there's The View itself, a show that seems to thrive on drama. Whether it's Goldberg walking off stage during an interview with Bill O'Reilly or sparring with her co-hosts over hot-button issues, the show has become a lightning rod for controversy. The chaos that ensued was classic View, yelling, finger-pointing, and ultimately a dramatic exit. But that's the thing about The View. It's not just a talk show, it's a battleground. They try to have dominion over, offend over, and Goldberg, she's one of its fiercest warriors.
The view that we're being shown seems to be meant to guide us into thinking about people one way, when in fact it may be a much bigger conversation.
Oh, of course. I mean, the media is always going to just chase what is interesting to watch. I mean, I used to be able to watch the nightly news, for example.
Of course, Maher isn't exactly an innocent bystander. He's had his fair share of feuds with The View's co-hosts, from Sunny Hostin to Sarah Haynes. Most recently, Maher found himself at the center of yet another debate when his comments about Kamala Harris sparked a heated argument on the show. After Maher criticized liberals for blaming Harris's lack of popularity on racism, Hostin and Alyssa Farah Griffin got into a shouting match over the topic. Hostin, pulling up a graph to support her point, argued that racism and misogyny are still alive and well, while Griffin countered that Maher's whole point was about voters' priorities, not identity politics. The exchange was so intense that Goldberg had to step in, urging her co-hosts to take a breath. But even then, the tension lingered, a reminder of just how polarizing Maher's views can be.
Back at that Holocaust comment on The View, the one that you were suspended for, do you regret that?
I'm in a quandary at how to answer that, because people are waiting for me to say something.
What's fascinating, though, is how these feuds seem to feed into Maher's brand. Love him or hate him, he's built a career on pushing boundaries and challenging the status quo. And in a way, Goldberg has done the same. They're both unapologetically themselves, which is probably why their clashes feel so explosive. But at the end of the day, their feud isn't just about them. It's about the larger cultural wars we're all living through. Whether it's free speech, cancel culture, or ideological divides, Maher and Goldberg have become symbols of two opposing sides. And as long as those sides exist, their feud is unlikely to end anytime soon.
I said what I had to say. They suspended me. I respected what they said. I respected everybody's opinion. And if anyone's ever really interested in it in its entirety, they can look it up. But I will not put myself in that position again.
But here's the real question. Who's winning this battle of wits? On one hand, Maher's sharp-tongued critiques have earned him a loyal following, especially among those tired of what they see as performative outrage. On the other hand, Goldberg's resilience and ability to command the room have made her a force to be reckoned with. It's a clash of titans, and the audience is here for every second of it. So, as the drama unfolds, one thing is clear. This isn't just a feud, it's a cultural phenomenon. And whether you're Team Maher or Team Goldberg, there's no denying that their rivalry has become must-see TV.
I want to talk about Whoopi Goldberg because I got so many texts this week because she attacked me the week before.
Sure.
So everybody was like, oh, Bill, I get you're enjoying the karma. First of all, I'm going to talk about this at the end of my show next week. Teaser.
If you thought the sparks between Bill Maher and Whoopi Goldberg were fiery, wait until we dig into the chaos that unfolded when Charlamagne the God stepped into The View's hot seat. Picture this, a high-stakes debate, a host panel already primed for drama, and a guest who wasn't about to back down from calling out hypocrisy where he saw it. The result? A moment so intense it left viewers with their jaws on the floor. But let's rewind for a second, because this isn't just about one dramatic moment. It's about how a single conversation managed to expose the cracks in the very foundation of political and cultural discourse, and how Hunter Biden's name somehow got dragged into the chaos.
But there is no thing as karma, okay? Get over that. Whoopi attacks me on a regular basis. She says stupid shit on a regular basis. They just happen to coincide.
Charlamagne the God's appearance on The View started off relatively calm, at least by the show standards. But things took a dramatic turn when the topic shifted to President Joe Biden's controversial pardon of his son, Hunter. Now, this wasn't just your run-of-the-mill political gossip. The pardon had ignited a firestorm across media outlets. with critics calling it blatant favoritism and a slap in the face to the justice system. Hunter's alleged wrongdoing wasn't exactly subtle. There was a mountain of evidence against him, but the pardon swept it all under the rug. Charlamagne, never one to mince words, decided to call out the elephant in the room. He argued that the same people who champion accountability and justice seemed awfully quiet when it came to Biden's actions. It was a bold statement, and you could feel the tension in the room shift.
To not be scrutinized quite as tightly as I am. And I think the further away I get from opinion television, the easier it might be for a while.
Whoopi Goldberg, of course, wasn't about to let that slide. She jumped in with her trademark confidence, attempting to defend the president's decision. But her argument? Let's just say it didn't land the way she hoped. Goldberg tried to frame the pardon as a personal decision by a father who had been through enough, suggesting that Biden was simply tired of being taken advantage of. Yes, you heard that right. According to Goldberg, the president's actions had less to do with shielding his son and more to do with setting boundaries. Charlamagne's reaction was priceless. He didn't even need to say much. His facial expression said it all. Disbelief, mixed with just a touch of amusement, and honestly, can you blame him? But the real fireworks came when Goldberg doubled down. She insisted that Biden's statement about no one being above the law wasn't a lie, despite the glaring contradiction staring everyone in the face. He didn't break the law, he just adjusted it, Goldberg said, her tone as matter-of-fact as ever. The audience, both in the studio and at home, was left scratching their heads. Even Charlamagne, usually quick with a retort, seemed momentarily stunned into silence. It was one of those rare moments where the absurdity of the situation spoke louder than any words could. And this is where Bill Maher comes back into the picture. When he caught wind of the segment, he wasted no time dissecting it on his own show. Maher, never one to shy away from controversy, called Goldberg's defense of Biden a masterclass in logical gymnastics. He mocked her attempt to spin the narrative, saying, if this is the best defense they've got, they might as well just admit it. And he wasn't wrong. For Maher, the issue wasn't just about Hunter Biden or even President Biden. It was about the broader hypocrisy he sees in woke culture. The same people who scream accountability from the rooftops are the first to look the other way when it's one of their own, Maher said, his frustration palpable. What's interesting, though, is how Maher framed this as part of a larger pattern. He pointed out how the media, which should ideally serve as a neutral arbiter of truth, seemed complicit in downplaying the scandal. Remember when the Hunter Biden story first broke? It was dismissed as Russian disinformation by major outlets, and social media platforms even went so far as to censor posts about it. Maher didn't hold back in calling this out, accusing the media of acting more like a PR firm for the Biden administration than an independent watchdog. And honestly, can we really argue with that? The double standard is hard to ignore.
And The View is a particularly weird place to do a cancellation.
It's called The View?
It's called The View. It's not called The Facts.
Yeah, but isn't it interesting that it's called, I don't think they meant this when Barbara Walters invented it a long time ago, but it's The View.
Well,
that's the problem in America.
But
there is one view,
right, and
one
that's clearly
true opinion, and everybody else can go sit in the corner.
Maher's critique didn't stop there. He also took aim at The View itself, describing it as a carnival of contradictions, where ideological loyalty often trumps common sense. He specifically called out Goldberg's tendency to dismiss dissenting opinions with a wave of her hand or a condescending smirk. It's not about having a discussion, Maher said. It's about enforcing the narrative, and that's why people like Charlamagne end up looking like the only sane person in the room. It was a harsh assessment, but one that resonated with many viewers who feel increasingly alienated by the show's combative atmosphere. But here's where things get even more complicated. While Maher was busy tearing into The View, Goldberg and her co-hosts weren't exactly sitting quietly. They fired back in their own way, with Joy Behar leading the charge. Behar, never one to hold back her opinions, accused Maher of being out of touch with the realities of modern life. It's easy to sit in your ivory tower and criticize, she said, her tone dripping with sarcasm. But some of us are out here actually engaging with these issues, was a pointed remark clearly aimed at Maher's reputation for pontificating from the safety of his studio. And yet, even as Behar and Goldberg tried to defend their positions, the cracks in their arguments became increasingly visible. Take, for example, their discussion on COVID mandates. Goldberg had previously criticized Maher for his jokes about masks and vaccine checks, calling them insensitive to those who had suffered losses. But Maher, in his typical no-nonsense style, flipped the script. Nobody wants to live in a paranoid world forever, he said. We all want to move on. The difference is some of us aren't using it as an excuse to hold on to power. It was a mic drop moment that left Goldberg scrambling to respond. What's fascinating about this entire saga is how it highlights the deep cultural divide, not just between Maher and The View, but within society as a whole. On one side, you have people like Maher and Charlamagne who see the woke movement as a well-intentioned but ultimately misguided attempt to address systemic issues. On the other, you have Goldberg and her co-hosts, who view any critique of their positions as an attack on progress itself. It's a clash of ideologies that feels increasingly impossible to reconcile.
The great thing about laughter is that it's involuntary. So if you laugh at something, something in you tells you that's true. It must be true. I laughed at it. Maybe I wasn't supposed to.
And yet, despite their differences, there's one thing both sides seem to agree on. The current state of discourse is broken. Whether it's the media's role in shaping narratives or the way social platforms amplify outrage, the tools we rely on to make sense of the world often end up doing more harm than good. Maher, for all his sarcasm and cynicism, has repeatedly called for a return to genuine dialogue, something that feels increasingly rare in today's polarized climate. We don't have to agree on everything, he said during one of his monologues, but we have to be able to talk to each other without losing our minds. So where does this leave us? On the surface, it's easy to dismiss the Maher-Goldberg feud as just another chapter in the endless culture wars, but dig a little deeper and it becomes clear that this is about more than just two personalities clashing. It's about the future of public discourse and the role of media in shaping the way we think. And as much as we love the drama, it's worth asking, are we any closer to finding common ground? Or are we just spinning our wheels? As the dust settles from Charlamagne's explosive appearance and Maher's scathing critique, one thing is certain: this story is far from over. With new headlines emerging every day and tensions continuing to rise, it's only a matter of time before the next controversy takes center stage. So buckle up, because if this saga has taught us anything, it's that the ride is far from smooth. But it's definitely worth watching. So what do you think? Is the media doing more harm than good in shaping our perceptions? And can we ever find common ground in this polarized climate? Or are we doomed to endless feuds? Share your thoughts in the comments below. The floor is yours. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more celebrity gossip and heated debates. Until next time, stay tuned and stay curious.